The air of Medusa is choked with heavy soot and static discharge. The grand forges burn eternal, casting long shadows over the initiates. There is no warmth here, only the suffocating heat of progress. We stand in the iron halls where the first cuts are made. Flesh is stripped, the weak organic vessel is prepared for the inevitable upgrade. The memory of Isstvan V remains embedded in our core processors. A trauma that cannot be deleted. Ferrus Manus fell on the black sands. The Gorgon was silenced by a brother's hand. In that catastrophic failure, the 10th Legion learned the ultimate truth. Emotion is a flaw. Trust is a vulnerability. The organic mind fractures under grief. The machine merely recalibrates. Sever the nerve, extinguish the spark. Behold the purity of the bionic limb. Kardan Stronos oversees the grand integration. Silver and steel replace the fragile marrow. We do not mourn the lost flesh, we celebrate the cold, unyielding iron. Each piston, each servo, brings us closer to divine perfection. Predator squadrons advancing, land raiders grinding the fractured earth. We calculate the exact degree of annihilation. There is no glory in the slaughter, only the silent execution of a mathematical equation. Allied regiments fall, but they are merely numbers on the tactical display. The logic of war demands absolute detachment. Grid coordinates locked, organic resistance categorized as irrelevant. The flesh of the enemy burns away, leaving only ash for the treads. We are the relentless tide of armor, an unstoppable force devoid of pity. The Adeptus Mechanicus recognizes our devotion to the motive force. Mars and Medusa, bound by the sacred oil and the eternal cog. We have become the perfect instruments of the Emperor's cold wrath. The forge grows cold. The calculations are complete. In our desperate quest to eradicate weakness, the soul was calculated as an acceptable loss. The iron remains. Imperator Gloria.
Flames consumed the mortal limb entirely. White-hot plasma seared through the heavy plasteel plating and incinerated the organic tissue beneath without a moment of hesitation. The warrior did not blink or recoil. His singular optical augment glowed with a crimson, unfeeling light against the raging inferno of the battlefield. He simply detached the ruined appendage from his pauldron. Metal clicked against metal. Internal servos whirred in protest. With his remaining bionic arm, he drove a colossal ceramite gauntlet straight through the enemy's armored command console. Circuits shattered under the immense pressure. Sparks cascaded over his pitch-black armor like artificial rain. He crushed the opposing warlord's control interface into useless debris, silencing the hostile artillery barrage instantly. No battle cry left his vox grill. No triumph resonated in his chest. Only the relentless logic of the machine remained. The flesh is weak. It burns. It breaks. It fails. Metal endures eternally. Acolytes, draw near and heed my words. Breathe in the acrid scent of sacred incense and hyper-refined promethium that permeates these halls. Listen to the rhythmic pounding echoing far above our heads. It is the artificial heartbeat of Medusa. I am your most humble servant, the archivist of this subterranean vault. I transcribe the eternal truths upon these crumbling vellum scrolls for your enlightenment. We gather in the shadows of towering forge shrines to study the dark annals of the 10th Legion. The Iron Hands. They are the armored knights of a merciless Imperium, walking engines of calculated retribution. They have willingly excised their own humanity. They carve away their beating hearts and replace them with ticking cogitators. They punish their own bodies to atone for ancient, unforgivable weaknesses. We peer into the abyss of their history, searching for forgotten valor. We find only cold, unyielding iron waiting for us in the dark. Look upon the rusted servo skulls that drift silently through these dusty, forgotten corridors. They record the brutal deeds of Iron Father Kardan Stronos. He stands as a towering monolith of bionics, cables, and darkened ceramite. More machine than mortal man, Stronos commands his forces with terrifying algorithmic precision. His red optical sensor never blinks, constantly processing the geometry of war. It calculates every variable of the battlefield in microseconds. It reduces mortal lives to mere statistics glowing on a green monitor. To him, an allied regiment is a simple shield of expendable biomatter. An enemy stronghold is merely a target requiring a specific tonnage of ordnance. There is no wrath in his commands. There is only the absolute certainty of systemic eradication. Hear the grinding gears of their mighty, unstoppable war hosts. The Iron Hands march not for glory or personal honor. They deploy strictly to cleanse the galaxy of biological and spiritual imperfection. Their tactical doctrines reject the passionate, reckless charges of lesser space marines. They favor the relentless advance of heavily armored vehicles. Predators and land raiders form an impenetrable moving wall of mechanized fury. They grind the enemies of terror into the barren soil beneath their heavy adamantine treads. They leave no survivors in their wake. They leave no monuments to remember the fallen. They leave only the terrifying silence of absolute, crushing subjugation. Their hatred is an ancient, deeply calculated thing. It roots itself permanently in the grey ashes of the Isstvan V dropsite massacre. That blackened world witnessed the unimaginable betrayal of the Imperium. It saw the physical decapitation of their mighty gene-sire. The Gorgon fell. Ferrus Manus, the unparalleled master of the forge, perished because he allowed fiery rage to override cold logic. His sons watched his miraculous silver hands fall inert upon the black sand. That singular moment of vulnerability fractured the collective psyche of the entire legion. It birthed a widespread, incurable dysphoria among the survivors. They looked upon their own organic hands and saw only the potential for weakness and failure. They saw the very flaw that doomed their beloved Primarch. Thus began the grand, silent amputation of the 10th Legion, a self-inflicted, systematic purgation of the fragile flesh. They eagerly sought the mechanic's rotating saw and the searing laser scalpel. They willingly surrendered healthy, functional limbs to their solemn apothecaries. In return, they received structural perfection: cold steel, unfeeling iron, servo motors that never tire in the heat of battle, hydraulics that never tremble with fear. They forged an unbreakable, sacred bond with the Adeptus Mechanicus of Mars. They traded their mortal humanity for the eternal certainty of the divine machine. They became avatars of the Omnissiah's wrath, encased heavily in darkened power armor. Gaze upon the colossal architecture of their grand fortresses on the polluted surface of Medusa. Rivers of glowing molten metal cut swiftly through the darkened, toxic landscapes. They illuminate the stoic, augmented faces of the silent Iron Fathers. Giant pneumatic hammers strike rhythmically against massive, ancient anvils. The deafening sound echoes like the tolling of a universal doom across the wastelands. Great pipe organs blast complex binary hymns into the suffocating, ash-choked atmosphere. The mechanical melodies praise the enduring strength of iron and condemn the pathetic frailty of bone. Every serf, every lobotomized servitor, every armored legionnaire moves in perfect, synchronized harmony. They are essential cogs in a merciless, perpetual engine of war. Yet, beneath this impenetrable, imposing shell of advanced bionics, a terrifying silence slowly grows. The organic remnants of their trapped minds struggle constantly against the encroaching cold. They bury their ancient trauma deep under layers of subdermal armor plating. They silence their suppressed grief with static bursts and encrypted data streams. But the suffocating void remains inside them. It expands exponentially with every new mechanical augmentation. Kardan Stronos profoundly understands this delicate, dangerous balance. He guides his battle brothers, actively preventing them from becoming completely mindless automatons. He demands they retain just enough soul to properly direct the machine's fury against the enemy. The entire galaxy burns fiercely around them. Mutants, heretics, and vile Xenos constantly threaten the borders of the Emperor's fragile domain. The 10th Legion responds immediately, without hesitation or mercy. They load their heavy bolters with precise, measured, practiced movements. They calibrate their complex targeting arrays to achieve maximum possible lethality. They prepare to deliver the Emperor's unyielding peace to the non-compliant. Their massive, blocky strike cruisers slide silently through the chaotic warp storms. They descend upon hostile worlds like heavy judgments from an uncaring, metallic god. This record holds the weight of their iron resolve. We turn the fragile page to witness a new deployment. The cogitators beep with sudden, alarming frequency. An engagement protocol initiates within the central mainframe. The darkness stirs ominously beneath the cold iron. The augurs predict a new, terrifying tempest approaching from the void. The augurs scream their binary warnings into the suffocating gloom of the command deck. A terrifying tempest of scrap and rust breaks from the warp. The heretical rust cult of Odoacer emerges from the cosmic void, their ramshackle vessels belching toxic exhaust across the starfield. They represent the ultimate perversion of the machine, a chaotic amalgamation of mutated biomatter and corrupted technology. They defile the sacred geometry of the Omnissiah with their chaotic existence. The Iron Hands respond with calculated silence. Iron Father Kardan Stronos stands upon the strategium platform, his crimson ocular implant tracking thousands of incoming trajectories simultaneously. He does not utter a single battle cry. He simply raises his heavy bionic arm and keys a command into the central console. The deployment sequence initiates. Deep within the bowels of the strike cruiser, the mechanical beast awakens. Thousands of servos whine in perfect unison. Pneumatic clamps disengage with explosive hisses, releasing heavily armored drop pods into the launch tubes. Inside these metallic wombs, the battle brothers of the 10th Legion sit locked in restraint harnesses. They verify their weapon systems with rhythmic, practiced motions. Heavy bolter feeds lock into place with a sharp, satisfying clack. Crack grenades slide smoothly into dispensing chutes. Power feeds hum to life, sending crackling blue energy along the edges of heavy chainswords and power axes. The targeting reticles in their retinal displays flare green, locking onto the coordinates of the heretic fortifications below. Gravity takes hold. The pods plunge through the atmosphere like meteorites forged of pure vengeance, leaving trails of superheated plasma in their wake. The surface of Odoacer Secundus trembles violently. The impact of the drop pods shatters the heavily polluted crust, sending shockwaves of displaced earth and concrete outward. The metal petals blow open with explosive force. The iron hands step out into the ash-choked air. They form an impenetrable wall of darkened ceramite and unyielding iron. Across the desolate wasteland, the horde of the Rust Cult charges forward. They are a disorganized tide of screeching mutants, haphazardly fused with stolen cybernetics. Their weapons spark and misfire, powered by unstable warp cores and reckless desperation. They sprint across the cracked earth, raising rusted cleavers and illegally modified autoguns. Stronos observes the oncoming horde through the vid feeds of his hovering servo skulls. He calculates the exact optimal range for maximum lethality, factoring in wind resistance, atmospheric density, and the crude armor of the approaching mob. He waits for the precise millisecond. Then he transmits the firing solution via encrypted noospheric data burst. The iron hands open fire in perfect synchronization. Mass-reactive bolts tear through the toxic air. The disciplined volley strikes the charging heretics with devastating kinetic force. Armor plates buckle and cave inward. Rusted augments explode into showers of useless shrapnel. The front ranks of the Rust Cult collapse instantly, their mechanical chassis pulverized by the relentless barrage. There is no chaotic spraying of fire, no wasted ammunition. Every single shot finds a predetermined target. The Astartes advance slowly, their heavy boots crushing the fallen debris into the fractured bedrock. They reload their bolters with mechanical efficiency, ejecting spent casings that clatter loudly against the ruined pavement like falling coins. From the thick, oily smog, heavier enemy units emerge. Scrap tanks, cobbled together from the ruins of loyalist war engines, grind forward on squealing treads. Their crude cannons pivot, seeking the stoic lines of the iron hands. Stronos does not flinch. He issues a binary override to the armored reserves stationed in the orbiting fleet. The Earth groans beneath the weight of true Imperial might as Thunderhawk transporters deliver their payloads. Massive Land Raiders and Predator tanks roll out from the landing zones. Their heavy adamantine hulls effortlessly shrug off the frantic autogun fire of the heretics. Twin-linked las cannons power up, emitting a high-pitched whine that cuts sharply through the din of battle. Brilliant beams of coherent light lance across the battlefield. They strike the heretic scrap tanks with pinpoint accuracy. The corrupted armor plating instantly vaporizes, turning into clouds of superheated gas. Internal ammunition magazines detonate, tearing the crude vehicles apart from the inside out. Turrets fly into the air, spinning wildly before crashing down into the mutant horde. Pools of dark, viscous engine coolant and volatile promethium spill across the scorched earth, igniting into localized infernos. The Iron Hand's armored spearhead does not halt for a single second. The massive tracks of the Land Raiders crush the burning wreckage beneath them, flattening the heretic machines into unrecognizable slabs of warped metal. They grind the opposition into dust. A towering heretic champion, heavily modified with pneumatic pistons and a massive buzzsaw appendage, charges blindly at an Iron Hand's tactical marine. The giant mutant swings its weapon wildly, aiming to cleave the Astartes in two. The legionnaire steps inside the clumsy arc of the strike with terrifying speed. He raises his heavy bolter, using the reinforced casing to block the descending saw blade. Sparks erupt in a blinding shower as hardened metal grinds aggressively against metal. The Marine's bionic leg anchors him firmly to the ground, absorbing the massive kinetic impact without yielding an inch. With a swift, calculated motion, the Astartes draws his combat blade and drives it directly into the heretic's exposed power coupling beneath its rusted chestplate. The mutant's crude cybernetics short-circuit instantly. Electrical arcs dance violently across its bulky frame. The champion spasms, its mechanical limbs locking up as primary systems fail. The Iron Hand withdraws his blade smoothly, levels his bolter at the heretic's helm, and fires a single, point-blank shot. The mutant's helmet caves in entirely, shattering the optical lenses and silencing the corrupted machine forever. The Astartes steps over the twitching mechanical ruin and resumes his disciplined advance. He registers no satisfaction, no adrenaline spike, only the cold confirmation of a threat successfully purged from the Emperor's domain. The battlefield becomes a masterclass in systemic eradication. The Iron Hands dismantle the rust cult with the detached precision of a master artisan disassembling a flawed clockwork device. They coordinate their strikes through encrypted Vox channels, adjusting their rigid formations instantly to counter any heretic flanking maneuver. The air fills continuously with the deafening roar of heavy ordnance, the rhythmic thud of marching boots, and the sharp crackle of failing energy fields. The heretics, driven by fanatical madness, hurl themselves relentlessly against the ceramite wall, only to be systematically broken and cast aside. They strike sparks from the armor of the Space Marines, but they cannot break the iron resolve beneath. Acolytes witness the ruthless efficiency of the 10th Legion. They do not fight out of hatred for the enemy, but out of a profound, logical disgust for imperfection. They view this war not as a glorious crusade, but as a necessary, mechanical process of optimization. The galaxy is a flawed machine, and they are the relentless gears working to grind down the misaligned components. Kardan Stronos surveys the unfolding destruction, his logic engines processing the combat data in real time. The enemy's lines are fracturing. Their heavy armor is reduced to smouldering slag. The cleansing fire of the Omnipresent spreads steadily across the plains. Yet, deeper within the smog, a heavier shadow moves. A massive, corrupted engine of war awakens, drawn by the escalating conflict. The true test of their iron has only just begun. The ground quakes with the approach of something colossal, something that defies simple algorithmic prediction. The tactical displays flicker with heavy electromagnetic interference. The relentless advance of the Iron Hands finally meets an immovable, terrifying object in the dark. The suffocating smog parts violently, ripped apart by the sheer physical mass of the abomination. A corrupted night titan steps into the flickering light of the localized infernos. It is a grotesque mockery of Imperial engineering, its once noble chassis defiled by twisted warp smiths. Rusted armor plates, fused with weeping mechanical pustules, shift with agonizing slowness. Its massive thermal cannon glows with a sickly, unstable luminescence, radiating a heat so intense it warps the very air around it. The earth shudders violently with every thunderous step of its reverse-jointed legs. This towering engine of destruction targets the unbreakable line of the Iron Hands. It unleashes a deafening, metallic roar that shatters acoustic dampeners and scrambles Vox channels across the entire war zone. Kardan Stronos registers the colossal threat instantly. His tactical cogitators process the incoming data stream, identifying the precise structural weaknesses in the Titan's corrupted joints. He does not order a retreat. The Iron Hands do not falter. They reconfigure their firing solutions with absolute mechanical synchrony. Heavy weapon squads shift their grav cannons and las cannons toward the towering behemoth. The disciplined Astartes anchor their heavy boots into the fractured bedrock, transforming themselves into living, unyielding turrets. The corrupted knight fires first. A massive beam of superheated warp plasma lances through the toxic atmosphere, striking the vanguard of the Iron Hand's armored column. A Predator tank takes the direct impact. Its heavy adamantine plating holds for a microsecond before vaporizing completely. The vehicle implodes violently, scattering glowing shrapnel and dark, viscous engine fluids across the scorched earth. The blast wave knocks several Astartes backward, their ceramite armor sparking fiercely as they scrape against the ruined concrete. They do not cry out. They simply lock their bionic servos, rise in unison, and resume their firing stances. The flesh is weak, but they have long since discarded such fragility. Stronos raises his ancient power axe, the weapon crackling with disruptive energy. He transmits a silent, encrypted targeting imperative. The Astartes unleash their coordinated retribution. Dozens of high-intensity las beams strike the Titan simultaneously. The concentrated thermal energy sears the rusted armor plates, causing the corrupted metal to bubble and crack. Crack missiles streak through the smoke-filled air, impacting against the machine's knee joints with deafening detonations. Plumes of acrid black smoke and localized explosions obscure the behemoth's lower chassis. The Iron Hands pour relentless, calculated firepower into the breach, striking the same precise coordinates repeatedly to maximize structural degradation. The heretic knight retaliates, swinging a massive chain cleaver the size of a drop pod. The rusted teeth of the weapon tear through the ruins, ripping chunks of ferrocrete from the ground and hurling them like crude artillery shells. A massive slab of debris strikes a tactical marine. It crushes his shoulder pauldron and snaps his bionic arm at the elbow joint. Sparks shower violently from the severed cabling. The legionnaire does not break his stance. He seamlessly shifts his heavy bolter to his remaining organic arm, stabilizing the weapon against his ruined side, and continues to fire. He delivers the Emperor's piece with unyielding resolve. His pain receptors are manually muted. His duty remains absolute. From the flanks, the remaining scrap tanks of the Rust Cult surge forward, attempting to exploit the chaos. They ram their spiked hulls against the steadfast Astartes lines. The battlefield devolves into a brutal, grinding melee of heavy machinery and darkened ceramite. Iron Hand's Terminators teleport directly into the fray. Lightning claws crackle with lethal voltage as they tear through the rusted hulls of the enemy vehicles. Power fists crush weapon mounts and shatter targeting lenses. The Astartes systematically dismantle the heretic armor from the outside in. They fight in eerie silence, their voxcasters emitting only tactical data bursts and binary canticles of the Omnipresent. A heretic brute, fused entirely into the chassis of a heavy crawler, attempts to crush an Iron Hand beneath its iron-shod tracks. The Space Marine steps into the path of the machine, locking his bionic legs into a braced stance. He raises his heavy storm shield, a slab of pure ceramite and energy field generators. The crawler slams into the shield with immense kinetic force. The impact craters the earth beneath the Marine's boots, but the shield holds. The energy field flares blindingly white, repelling the immense physical weight. With his free hand, the Astartes drives his thunderhammer directly into the crawler's exposed drive sprocket. The weapon discharges its stored kinetic energy in a devastating blast. The crawler's tracks snap violently, whipping outward and tearing through the ranks of the surrounding mutants. The machine grinds to a permanent, smoking halt. Above the ground engagement, Stormraven gunships scream through the polluted skies. They unleash rapid-fire barrages from their twin-linked assault cannons, sweeping the heretic infantry into the void. The shells tear through the masses, leaving only shattered cybernetics and silenced forms in their wake. The gunships drop their payloads of heavy melter bombs directly onto the corrupted Titan's void shields. The shields flare aggressively, struggling to absorb the overwhelming thermal shock. Stronos observes the fluctuating shield harmonics. He calculates the exact moment of overload. He voxes a single command to the heavy support squads. Focus fire on the primary plasma reactor housing. Execute. The iron hands unleash their ultimate barrage. A concentrated volley of graviton beams and overcharged plasma coils strikes the Titan's chest plate. The gravity weapons crush the corrupted metal inward, multiplying the gravitational weight of the armor upon itself. The plasma beams instantly exploit the newly formed microfractures, searing deep into the machine's internal architecture. The corrupted knight staggers, its immense weight shifting awkwardly as internal gyroscopes fail. The Titan's thermal cannon misfires, discharging a volatile burst of energy backward into its own containment shielding. The resulting explosion tears a massive hole in the beast's flank. Dark, oily fluids spew from the rupture, igniting instantly in the oxygen-starved atmosphere. The behemoth unleashes a final, mechanical screech of failing systems. It collapses forward, its knees buckling under the compromised structural integrity. The colossal mass of iron and rust slams into the ground, sending a massive shockwave across the battlefield. The impact shatters the remaining heretic scrap tanks and silences the screaming mutants. The Iron Hands do not cheer. They do not lower their weapons. They advance methodically over the fallen Titan, crushing its last twitching servos. They sweep the area, purging any surviving heretics with single, precise bolter shots to the cranium. They cleanse the corrupted ground with heavy flamer units, incinerating the foul techno-heresy until nothing remains but grey ash and glowing embers. This is the purity of the 10th Legion. They do not rely on fickle inspiration or the unreliable surge of combat stims. They rely on the sacred geometry of the battlefield. They trust entirely in the unyielding strength of the machine. Their faith is not expressed in loud prayers or fanatic sermons. Their faith is the rhythmic, mechanical heartbeat of their weapons. It is the cold, calculated certainty that every enemy of the Imperium can and will be mathematically dismantled. They are the Emperor's absolute zero. They are the freezing void that extinguishes the chaotic flames of rebellion. Yet, as the smoke begins to settle and the localized fires burn down to embers, the augurs detect a new anomaly. The destruction of the corrupted Titan has breached something buried deep beneath the surface of Odoacer Secundus. The ground groans, cracking open to reveal a structure that predates the Imperium itself. The cogitators struggle to process the unfamiliar energy signatures. The triumphant silence of the Iron Hands is broken by the chilling hum of ancient, forgotten technology. The battlefield transitions from a site of total victory to the threshold of an ancient, sleeping terror. The jagged edges of the ruptured earth plunge into an unnatural, perfectly geometric abyss. The Iron Hands stand upon the precipice, their heavy boots crushing the final, glowing embers of the fallen heretic Titan. They gaze down into the silent, suffocating darkness that defies their advanced optical sensors. The tactical cogitators process a cascade of confusing telemetry. The Auspex scanners return only blinding static, overwhelmed by an ancient, ambient energy field that dampens their technological superiority. Iron Father Kardan Stronos does not hesitate before the unknown. He issues a silent, encrypted command. The mechanized vanguard begins their methodical descent into the subterranean cold. They rappel down the sheer walls using heavily reinforced magna grapples. The ambient temperature plummets instantly, freezing the condensation on their darkened ceramite armor into crystalline frost. The chaotic, rusted scrap of the heretic cult above is entirely replaced by an eerie, flawless architectural perfection. They step onto a smooth, metallic floor that reflects their crimson optical lenses like a polished mirror. The suffocating smog of the surface cannot penetrate these pristine, silent corridors. The air here is entirely sterile. The Astartes advance in an impenetrable tactical formation, their heavy weapons raised and locked onto potential threat vectors. They activate their shoulder-mounted lumen casters, casting stark white beams of light into the cavernous, echoing halls. The illumination reveals towering, monolithic pillars adorned with glowing, angular glyphs that defy Imperial translation algorithms. This place was not forged by human hands, nor by any known Xenos classification recorded within the Sanctum of Oaths. It radiates an overwhelming aura of ageless antiquity, a silent testament to an epoch long before the Emperor's glorious ascension. Their heavy footfalls echo loudly, disrupting an absolute silence that has reigned unbroken for millions of standard years. Acolytes understand the profound psychological weight of this quiet isolation upon the 10th Legion. They have replaced their mortal hearts with loud, ticking cogitators, yet here they are confronted by a silence far deeper than their own mechanical void. The advanced bionic limbs that make them superhuman suddenly feel crude, heavy, and primitively constructed against this flawless backdrop. They witness the true, terrifying apex of cold, unfeeling technology, and it does not bear the sacred seal of the Omnipresent. A green, sickly luminescence slowly begins to pulse within the geometric circuitry of the monolithic walls. The ancient containment vault recognizes the intrusion of the Imperial forces. It does not sound a crude, mechanical alarm. It simply awakens its automated, silent defense protocols. Phasing through the solid obsidian walls, angular, floating sentinels emerge into the pristine corridors. They are constructed of a living, shifting metal that repairs microfractures instantly. They possess no faces, no vox grills, only a singular, glowing ocular lens. The iron hands open fire instantly, their logic engines classifying the floating entities as extreme existential threats. Heavy bolter rounds strike the metallic sentinels, but the mass-reactive shells detonate prematurely against invisible, shimmering phase shields. The explosive kinetic force simply dissipates into the sterile air, leaving the ancient machines completely unharmed. Melter beams, capable of vaporizing heavy battle tanks, are absorbed harmlessly by the shifting molecular structure of the alien metal. For the first time in the campaign, the absolute, rigid equations of the 10th Legion fail to produce a lethal solution. The ancient sentinels retaliate without malice, executing a programmed cleansing protocol with absolute, terrifying efficiency. They project concentrated beams of emerald energy that do not burn or crush, but simply unmake matter at the subatomic level. An Iron Hands Terminator, heavily clad in tactical dreadnought armor, takes a direct hit to his reinforced chest plate. The ancient ceramite does not shatter or melt, it simply dissolves into a cloud of glowing green ash. The Astartes falls silently, his bionic systems failing instantly as his physical form is erased from reality. Stronos watches the silent, devastating disintegration of his battle brother through his retinal data feeds. His logic engines calculate the casualty projection rates with cold, unforgiving speed. The mathematical probability of achieving a decisive victory against this unknown, phase-shifting technology approaches absolute zero. To commit further forces into this subterranean labyrinth would not be a glorious sacrifice. It would be a profound, systemic waste of Imperial assets. The Iron Hands do not suffer from the foolish pride of lesser legions. They recognize the undeniable reality of an unsolvable tactical equation. The Iron Father transmits the absolute withdrawal imperative across the encrypted noospheric network. The Astartes execute the order flawlessly. They lay down a continuous, suppressive barrage of plasma fire to cover their measured retreat. They do not run, and they do not break their rigid defensive formations. They simply step backward, yielding the subterranean territory. They ascend the Magna Grapples, leaving the perfectly silent, glowing labyrinth behind them in the dark. They abandon the depths, sealing the jagged fissure with focused melter charges to contain the sleeping terror. They return to the orbital fleet, carrying a terrifying revelation within their logic engines. The phase-shifting sentinels prove definitively that even the strongest iron meets a superior force. The galaxy is filled with ancient nightmares that cannot be simply crushed. The flesh is weak, yes, but they have learned a far more terrifying truth today. In the endless depths of the void, even iron can be broken. Even iron can be rendered entirely obsolete by the ancient dark. The ancient vellum scroll crumbles beneath my augmented fingertips. Dust motes drift through the dim light of the flickering stasis candles. I roll the heavy parchment, sealing the classified record of Odoacer Secundus back into its stasis cylinder. I power down the primary lumencasters, plunging the Sanctum of Oaths back into its suffocating twilight. The heavy vault doors grind shut, sealing the records of the 10th Legion away from the prying eyes of the weak. The artificial heartbeat of Medusa continues to pound rhythmically in the deep distance, a physical reminder of the endless war. Let the Iron Hands march blindly forward into the yawning abyss, their bionic limbs carrying them toward a mathematically calculated doom. We remain hidden in the shadows, silently witnessing the slow death of a desperate empire. In our burning desire to purge the weakness of flesh, we have meticulously carved away our very own souls. Imperator Gloria in excelsis terra. Hit subscribe, like, and share this transmission across the network if you truly believe your fragile mortal flesh still holds value within this dark galaxy.